Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Elam, and this is Going Mental, where I'm joined each week by the truthful, tenacious, tough, and often terrifying Dr. T. Take that, Dean Esme. Dr. T, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everyone, and wow, the alliteration. Yeah,
We found that we can make Dr. T smile by giving her alliterations for Christmas.
April is alliteration month, apparently.
Okay, well, today we're going to be talking about crazy's red flags. I want to start this out by saying that I fully recognize and sympathize with and understand and support the MGTOW community, or at least the portions of it that have decided to just totally go their own way and not have anything to do with dating, not have anything to do with relationships with women. I do not blame you. And again, I support your decision, and I often think it's extremely wise to go that direction. However, there are, believe it or not, millions and millions and millions of men who are going to choose to get into relationships and get involved with people, whether we think they should or not. And those men are also men that we advocate for through the work that I do, the work that Dr. T does. And we want to include information for them because while I may not personally agree with all their lifestyle choices, it does not mean I want to ignore them or throw them under the bus because of that. So we're going to talk today about when you meet somebody, that first period, which is often marked by some really crazy sort of psychotic infatuation stuff that makes you go blind and lose your reason and lose your judgment in the first place. Then you add to that the person who's the object of your affections in that case may be somebody that's just plain crazy. And the thing is, they're going to show you signs, and we're going to talk about those. So if you can get over the initial hot and heavy breathing sort of I got to have this person in my life thing going on for you early on and just see what may be waiting for you down the road, then you might just save yourself a lot of misery. So with that, I'm going to yield the floor for at least 1 minute to Dr. T and ask you, what are some of the things that you recommend that men look for in the beginning?
Well, one type of person to avoid is somebody who is wearing a bracelet from the local psychiatric unit, like a bangle bracelet. Coyote Shivers, I'm talking to you. That wasn't nice. I'm sorry.
Not nice, but true.
But true. In all seriousness, I think some of the basic things to look for are, one, and this is something you and I, Paul, have discussed many, many times on the old Blog Talk radio show, is how does she respond to being told no, to disappointment, to frustration, to not getting her way?
Which, of course, guys, you will never find out if you don't say no to something. Just want to throw that in there, that you can find out her reactions to hearing the word no about something a lot better if you are actually willing to say no about something. I suggest trying it with something minor. And if she comes back, if she gets that sort of shocked, I can't believe I heard that to crazy, no is the N word. And if she looks shocked, she is utterly disappointed, and you get the sense that she says, and if she says something like, fine, and you guys know what that means when you hear that word fine said in that tone, which really means I'm going to show you a little bit later just how I feel.
I thought it meant fucked up, insecure, needy, and emotional.
Yes, that's about how fine comes back. If she's outraged, if she loses her marbles because she heard you say the word no, or because you put something that you want in front of what she wants to take care of yourself, if that's a bother for her early, in the time that you spend with her, can you possibly imagine how much it's going to bother her after she feels like she has established control in the relationship down the road, when she's become used to getting her way? The early demonstration of behavior that she has difficulty with hearing no or not getting her own way is a big, wide, new car sales lot sized flag that's bright red, waving in your face, saying, stay the hell away. So I would advise paying attention to it. How
No,
about another thing, Dr. T?
I just add, no is one of the most basic and first boundaries as children that we learn. Being able, and there's terrible twos. Why are they the terrible twos? Because kids like to run around saying, no, 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 no. But this is, as little individuals, that is our first exercise of autonomy. No, I don't want to eat this. No, I don't want to play with that. No, I don't want to be picked up. No, I don't want to go to bed. And parents, if those of you who are parents out there, I want to encourage you to allow your children, boys and girls alike, allow them to have a no every now and again in an age-appropriate way. Allow them to develop some agency. Allow them to have boundaries. Like, obviously, you don't want to let them have a no if they're sticking their fingers in the electrical socket and they want to persist. But no, if they don't want to eat their peas or their carrots. Again, not every night they need their vegetables, but allow them some autonomy over themselves. A lot of parents, even well-intentioned parents, will say to their kids, don't you tell me no. And what that does is it tells your child that it's not okay to have boundaries. And I think a lot of guys, too, are afraid of disappointing a woman. So even if they want to say no, they're so afraid of disappointment, because disappointment might lead to not having a relationship, which might lead to not getting laid, that they sacrifice their own agency, their own best interests, just for sex, or the potential for having sex. And you got to have more respect for yourself, guys. Getting laid, it's great, but it's not the end-all be-all. Not at the cost of your self-respect and your dignity or your emotional well-being.
I couldn't agree more. I think one of the things that we probably ought to talk about a little bit is sort of what typically happens. And I know there's going to be somebody in the comments and going to say, that doesn't apply to me. Okay, and if it doesn't apply to you, it doesn't apply to you. Okay, so it's not like I'm saying that this is hard and fast for everybody. But I will tell you my observations from my own life and from watching other men and making a study of these things behaviorally, at least on an anecdotal level, for most of my adult life. What I observed in men from the first contact until they become sort of official with somebody, or they go through the infatuation phase of a relationship, is that there is a dance going on of the guy trying to figure out whatever he has to say, whatever he has to be, whatever he has to present himself as in order to gain her approval. That's the sort of mating dance of courtship. He's trying to project that he's strong, that he's capable and a good provider, but at the same time he has to show he's going to defer to her, that what she wants and what she expects and what she needs out of a man is something he's capable of fulfilling. It's sort of like a 90-day job interview where you're suiting up every day and putting on your best tie and sitting down and trying to figure out what your prospective new boss wants and how you articulate that. What I'm going to suggest to men is that if you find yourself doing this, stop. Stop doing that. It is not a job interview. I guess you could compare it that way in some ways, but the fact of the matter is, believe it or not, you're supposed to be deciding whether or not you want to get involved with her, too. And most guys that I know, and again, it doesn't apply, not all men are like that, I got it. But the fact of the matter is that once most guys have decided that they are physically attracted to a woman, they begin a rationalization process why everything that they do, which is basically selling themselves out, their beliefs. Oh God, I love Sex in the City. Of course I do. Yeah, we could stay up and eat popcorn and watch reruns of Sex in the City every night because, you know, as a guy, I roll that way. When Sex in the City makes you puke, guys will actually say that kind of stuff at the beginning. They'll say they like musicians they don't like. They'll say they like movies they don't like. They say they have values that they don't have in order to feel like that they're a fit with this. Don't do that. One, that is not near as successful in getting women attraction to you going because they decide pretty quick whether they're attracted to you anyway. But it doesn't really help. You think it helps, it doesn't. Women tend to respond to guys with spines a little better than to guys who are mealy-mouthed and putting on a show. But the thing is, if you're in this process and you start off with just being willing to say anything, because all you're doing, I just want you to imagine this. I want you to imagine a little puppy that's sitting up on its hind legs with its front paws like this and his tongue hanging out for a little morsel of meat. That's you. Get it? That is you in the courting situation. And if you look at the reality of that, hopefully it will motivate you to get on all legs and to stand on your own and be who you are. Because here's the question. Do you want to be with somebody that knows who you are and accepts it? Or do you want to paint a false picture of yourself that you have to unpaint over a period of time with lots of conflict in the process as you get down the road and decide you're in an actual relationship? That's just one thing. Plus, your being yourself will screen out the undesirables. It's one thing that you can do to screen out the undesirables. If you think Sex in the City is a piece of modern pop culture garbage, which I think it is, then say so. Don't just say, I don't watch it. Say, I think it's pop culture garbage. That may run off the woman that you're talking to that just thinks Sex in the City is the most brilliant thing that's ever happened to media. But the thing is, if you recognize it's garbage, do you want to be with a woman who thinks it's art? Is that what you really want?
Or aspirational?
Yes.
Yeah, guys, if she has a shrine to Carrie Bradshaw somewhere in her apartment, red flag.
Big red flag. Another area that I've always, and I'm going to be really interested to hear Dr. T's thought on that, on this, is that in the early parts when you're getting to know somebody, if within the first, say, few hours of meeting you, they're talking about the various people that have sexually abused them as children, and spilling out every trauma from their lives, that's not a flag. That is like a United Nations array of all red flags telling you if you have any sense at all, you will get away. And I mean seriously, get away from somebody that discloses too much information too soon. I'm not talking about what happened to them. I'm not saying never be around anybody that ever had any abuse issues. But if their boundaries are so poor that they are willing to tell you intimate, really horrific details of their lives within a few minutes of meeting you, I'd like Dr. T to speak some more to this because I think it's important. But for me, that's a big neon sign saying get away. If you have a brain in your head, you'll get away.
I agree. It's a huge red flag, and I'm not saying that somebody who has true trauma history isn't deserving of compassion, but if that's the first thing she wants you to know about her, or one of the first things she wants you to know about her on your initial coffee date or wine drinking date, yes, absolutely, it shows a lack of boundaries, but it also shows somebody who I believe is trying to use sympathy and pity to form a connection. And somebody who leads off by telling you what a victim they are. Do you want to go out with a victim? And by that I mean somebody who defines herself as a victim, even if the victimization happened 20 or 30 years in the past. That's somebody who, if she's a professional victim, you're going to definitely run into issues with, because professional victims are never wrong. They're always wronged. They are the victim. And if she believes that every man in her life has victimized her, she's setting you up to play the hero, but what you need to understand is eventually she will paint you as a villain. And even if a woman isn't talking about, sexual molestation or assaults that she suffered in the past, if she's talking about how every guy she's dated has been a jerk or a player, or using other derogatory terms to describe her past boyfriends or husbands, get out. Get out. Just walk away, because eventually she's going to be saying that to you too. And I know for a lot of men hearing that, they want to get their trusty white steed saddled up, and I'll show her that I'm not like all of those other guys. It's like, what you need to understand is eventually you're going to be one of those guys in her mind.
And she will be talking about you to some other schmuck in the future over a first date, and you will just be another one of the lineup. I want to expand on that a little bit, because this is a real common thing. This isn't, just something that happens with guys every once in a while. On even first dates, second dates, guys will hear the stories about, especially the last boyfriend / husband, and how he's still bothering me, and he still gives me a hard time, won't leave me alone. Listen, guys, that is calculated.
Yes.
Understand this. That's calculated. She is not sharing her life with you and helping you get to know her. What she's doing is she's throwing bait in the water, so you'll take it and puff your chest out and say, I wouldn't let anybody treat you that way. That's exactly the words she's looking for, and it puts you on a leash from the beginning. It lets you know what your job is with her. If somebody's bothering her, and really, quite frankly, if anything's bothering her, you are going to be expected to do something about it. All this crap you've heard your whole life about how women want to talk about their problems, they don't want anybody to fix them, bullshit. That is the biggest line of crap in the world. Sometimes, yes, people just want to be able to vent without having somebody fix their problems. But when we're talking about the type of personality that's going to tell you on a first date, well, I was incested at age 6, or is going to tell you my last 3 boyfriends have all been abusive alcoholics, not recognizing that she's the common denominator but between the last 3 boyfriends, but who is sending you the signal that white knight is your job in her life. These are the women that are going to keep you there. And they're going to keep you on that white horse, and the moment, it isn't like you have to do anything bad to them, but the moment that you decide to unmount that horse and say, look, you're a grown-up, what happened 5 years ago is done, you need to start taking care of your own problems, then you're going to see an entirely different person than you saw. If you want to see somebody change personalities fast, tell a borderline to start taking care of her own problems and to quit bothering you with them all the time.
Yeah.
And she will go from loving you to hating your guts in a nanosecond.
You don't even have to tell, and it's not just women who have borderline personality traits. We're talking about any emotionally immature personality. Say no to her once. Disappoint her once. don't come to her rescue quickly enough for her. Oh, you can't take her 30th text of the day because you're in a business meeting? Well, you're just like all the other bastards before you. You don't care about her. And I would say, there are a lot of guys who are attracted to these types because they were, raised by typically mothers who have similar personalities, so they grew up believing it's their job to fix and make some woman happy. In my experience, I want to go back to what you said about women just want to be listened to when they're venting. They're not looking for solutions. I think that's true sometimes, but even these women who have who go from crisis to crisis to, I should say, self-manufactured crisis, oftentimes they're not looking for you to fix their problems. They're looking for you to enable their problems and their bad behavior, because when you offer real solutions, they usually get pissed off, and that's when they say, I just want to be heard. I just want you to listen to me. And by the way, to clean up their mess and allow them to continue to make poor choices while you push the broom behind them. So they're looking for enablers, not heroes and not fixers. And you do not want to be an enabler. It is a thankless task, and when you finally get tired of it, she will turn on you, and it will get ugly and vicious.
I would suggest also that any time that something starts with the words, if you cared about me, then fill in the blank, that's a big red flag. Now, of course, there's always exceptions. If you're an abusive jerk, physically violent or whatever, and somebody said, if you cared about me, you would quit hitting me, that would be a reasonable statement. However, if you cared about me, you would buy me this. If you cared about me, you would go do this for me. If you cared about me, you wouldn't challenge me to be accountable. If you cared about me, you would sit and listen to me drone endlessly, hour after hour after hour, making my life the center of your life at all times. Then you're dealing with a crazy person. And here's the deal. I mean, it's like we can talk about the symptoms of these all day long, but one of the things I'm going to keep coming back to is the unfortunate tendency in men to think that this is the normal state of a relationship, that this is how things are supposed to go. Oh, yes, my wife slash girlfriend slash partner has problems, and every day when I get home from work, I listen from 6 in the evening till 9:30, 10 o'clock at night about how bad the world is to her. And of course, I get to hear about everything I'm doing wrong, and then I end up feeling like, okay, what can I do to fix this? That is not the way things are supposed to be between two human beings that love each other and that live together and that share life together. It's not supposed to be that way. If your lives together are centered on her life, then that's not going to get better. And you will wake up, no matter how long that you placate and that you appease and that you enable this stuff to keep going on. One day you'll wake up and say, my life sucks. I don't have...
Your wife sucks.
Yes, your wife sucks. Only she probably still doesn't.
As in sucking the life force out of you.
That's the only blowjob you're getting, guys. Is that the life force is going to be sucked completely out of you, and then you'll wake up and you'll blame her, and you will be wrong. Because if you look back honestly through your whole pattern of behavior with this person from the beginning, from the first date where you paid for everything and pledged yourself as a protector and a provider who would take care of everything and all problems, and she didn't have to worry her pretty head about anything as long as you were around, you sent the message that none of this is about me. You sent the message that you were not really a part of the relationship except to make her happy, that was your job, that you're a walking ATM. That is almost invariably the case. Men get themselves into these situations, and then when it's time to get out, that's when you have a corrupt family court system that is waiting to take the abuse she's heaped on you for years. And if you think she was able to heap abuse by herself, ooh, man, when she gets a family court on her side, or she goes and rounds up a bunch of friends and tells them what a jerk you are because you figured out that you were tired of working your ass off all day to spend all your money on somebody that didn't appreciate anything you did and only wanted more, then you're going to find real misery. And the point is, how do you get that to not happen before it happens? Because we can always send you to Dr. T 10 years later, and she can help you put the pieces back together, and she's good at it. But how about the idea of going into a relationship knowing in your own mind, in your own heart, that you're not going to need Dr. T in 10 years? How's that for an idea? What say you, Dr. T?
That would be great. I want to, talking about family court, brought up another red flag, or not even a red flag, just avoid at all costs. If you're out with a woman, getting to know her, and she trashes her ex-husband, yet cashes an alimony check from him every month, no. No, 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 no. Look for the nearest exit sign. Even if the guy is a total jerk, she's taking money from someone she hates. What does that say about her integrity?
Everything.
What does it say about a grown-ass adult, able-bodied grown-ass adult, who is not working to support herself but taking a check from somebody she hates? Now look, there's such a thing as transitional support. A woman's been out of the workforce for 5 years because she was raising kids. She needs 6 months to a year of transitional support while she gets herself back in the workforce. I think, I'm still skeptical about that, because I think, no, it's, being married to someone does not, if it doesn't work out, does not entitle you to continue living that lifestyle, because it wasn't your lifestyle. You were having that lifestyle through the hard work and labor of someone else. So even that, I'm a little leery of, but somebody who, not working, kids are in school, hates her ex-husband, what an asshole he is, and is cashing a big fat check from him every month, do not date these women. Do not date them. They have poor character, and they may someday do the same thing to you.
Very likely that they will. I think it's questionable, I really do, about dating women who already have children. I mean, I'm not going to get into this as a topic now. I am just going to say that that is an even much more complicated decision that's wrought with perils that the childless women don't tend to have. So my personal feeling is that it's not a good idea. But if you're going to do it, again, like I said, we're talking to men in general here, not just the ones that are living life. Or, well, if they were living life like I would suggest, they wouldn't need to listen to what I have to say. But the guys out there that do insist on dating women that have children, here's a couple of things to look for, and to look for them very carefully. One, how involved is their father in the lives of the children? How acrimonious are things between her and him? Does she ever badmouth the father to the children? Not just to you, but to the children. Does she work to maintain a connection with the father that facilitates his co-parenting with her? If she is not doing that, and you can ask her about it, what's going on with the father? And if she says, well, he's never around, and despite the fact that I've worked real hard trying to keep the door open, I try to encourage him to even get extra time with the kids, and you can see that she's telling the truth about that, that's one thing. Mm-hmm. But if a woman tells you the father's never around, and it really hasn't affected the kids very much, run, run.
Yeah.
She's telling you right there what your worth is, too. It's not just her exes, but how she sees all men, how she could even see the father of her own children, which her children desperately need if they want to have the best shot in life of growing into functional, productive lives. But she's telling you that she is oblivious to the needs of her own children. How invested is she going to be in your needs if she won't even recognize the needs of her own children? So if she's a single mother, I mean, go for it if you must. But the fact of the matter is that you've got a scenario right in front of you in that case where you can make very, very sensible determinations about the real nature of this woman, and she doesn't even have to know you're doing it. Just ask about the father and pay attention to what's being told to you. Because if she's dismissed the father and decided he's not relevant to the lives of his own children, and you think for some whatever crazy reason in your own head that she would never treat you, oh, Cupcake would never treat me that way, you probably need more help than she does.
Well, there's that, and I just as a side note or footnote, some of the most heartbreaking cases I've worked with are men who got involved with single mothers, divorced mothers, or women who never got married to their children's fathers. They get involved and they fall in love with the kids. Absolutely adore the children. And when that relationship ends, they have no rights. Those kids are, if they did become a parental figure to the kids, you get ripped out of their lives. In fact, that's a hook. It's not just biological fathers who stay with really awful female partners because they're afraid of losing their own kids. There are men who get involved with these single moms who they don't want to be with her anymore, but they know that she will sever that relationship in a heartbeat, and there is not a damn thing they can do about it. And it guts them. So that's another reason to exercise caution, because if you are a man who loves children and wants to be a father and it's a great ready-made family, it doesn't work out. You have zero legal rights to these kids, and it will hurt like hell.
Another thing to add on to the pile of all that anguish is that in so many cases, kids that have been alienated from their fathers or have been more or less just removed from his life, they fall in love with the new guy too. It isn't just him falling in love with them, but he becomes not a replacement, but he fills a void in their lives for some sort of adult male interaction and connection. And then he becomes just something else that's ripped out of their lives to add to their dysfunction, to add to their lack of trust in adults and in people and in themselves. And they begin to, just like they do in a divorce, almost all kids say, what did I do to make my parents break up? They're part of their coping process and dealing with divorce is self-blame. And really good parents spot that and do stuff with it. But then it happens again in second, third, fourth. I mean, there's some women that go through boyfriends and turn them into Uncle Daddy.
Uncle New Shiny Daddy, yeah.
Yeah, a whole new shiny daddy a few times a year. And every one of those is a blow to those kids. It's a devastation and a disappointment. And by the time she's done cycling men through their broken lives, they get to the point where they just don't care. And then they go up and they carry that baggage into every relationship as adults that they have. Not trying to make a moral plea, but don't do that. Don't participate in that.
No. And that's another red flag, related to this, is that just avoid women who have more than two children with more than two biological fathers. Okay, just stay away from that. I'm sure there are some cases where it's possibly not a danger sign, but if, she travels upstream and spawns every few years with a new partner, keep that child support gravy train rolling, please don't. Just don't. Just don't. We know the first one was a deadbeat. The second one was an alcoholic. The third one, who knows? It doesn't matter what the stories are. It's you're seeing somebody who sees the fathers of her children as sort of impermanent wallets. Do not go there.
Because if that, especially if the oldest child is old enough, she'll be looking to make a new one, guys. Because either the welfare train or the child support train or both, which it is in many cases, is something that she has to, there's cost of living increases, inflation, all that stuff. Sometimes you just have to make another baby to make ends meet. I definitely agree with Dr. T on that. That's something just stay away from completely.
Another thing related to spousal support, we're talking about money. I'm going to jump back to that one. If you're out with a woman and she's head to toe decked out in designer duds, designer handbag, fancy car, but has no apparent means of income of her own to afford those things, not a good idea.
That means you're the source, guys. It's the only thing it possibly can mean. And speaking of money, there's something else I wanted to bring up too. And given that this is now 2014, when there are more women in the workforce than men, there are more women getting higher education than men, and I mean by far. There are more women in middle management positions. Of course, feminists say that women still make 77 cents on the dollar to every man, and of course, men even have more time because men are allotted 28 hours in each day, whereas women only get 24. That's just sort of the continuing discrimination that we face. But I think it's a very good idea, and it's a deal breaker of an idea, and it's one that's scary for most men to take, but I can tell you personally, I have done it. It works. It's a wonderful thing to do. And when you meet somebody, is to look them in the eye and say, if I had $100 million in the bank, I would not finance a relationship. Which means that if we're going to see each other past this first cup of coffee and we're going to become a regular item, you have to carry your financial end of this. And I can hear, even though some of them may not say it out loud, there's a lot of guys in the back of their brain that's going, oh my God, no, you'll never get laid. Yes, you will. Because believe it or not, there are women out there that do not mind paying for their own bills, that do not mind carrying their own weight, that don't have the expectation that everywhere you go and everything you do is supposed to be sort of some, like a Christmas celebration for her and you're Santa Claus. There's plenty that are the opposite way, because I found several no's before I got talked to one person and said that very thing, that if I had $100 million in the bank, I wouldn't finance a relationship, and I am still with her after 12 years. It is a doable proposition. It is an absolutely realistic proposition, and you don't have to use those exact words. But if you establish early on that you're not a sugar daddy, that will really help you, believe it or not. But if you
don't have to have $100 million in the bank. You could be, you could make the average, the median income for wherever you live. It doesn't matter.
I used to do groups with guys about this, and once we finally got them talking about their frustrations in relationships, and I would ask them, if any of you have ever had the feeling that you could just rip your hair out and punch holes in walls because no matter what you do, no matter what you buy, you just can't figure out how to please that woman. And eventually all those guys would admit, yeah, I've had that feeling in a relationship. And men identify universally with only feeling materialistically important in a lot of their relationships, and having to cough up money for things that are of no consequence to them but seem to be very important to her. And what I found in talking to these men was to ask them about their early behavior in the relationship. What were the things you did? Did you pay for everything? Did you buy lots of expensive presents and flowers and everything else? And almost invariably, the answers was yes. They led with their wallets. They walked into this showing how much I've got to blow on you, and then became angry and frustrated down the road because she thought they were supposed to blow money on her. So again, we do have some accountability in men to look at that and say, you know, you went fishing. I mean, when you fish with stink bait, you catch bottom dwellers. That's sort of how that thing works. And if you go into it, you may narrow the field. You will certainly, with women today, telling them you're not financing a relationship will narrow the field. There are women that will simply say, there's no way, see you, bye. That's a good thing, by the way. That's really a good thing. If a woman says, you have to pay to spend time with me, we've got a whole profession.
No, I was out at the Bunny Ranch, or what's it called?
Yeah.
Ranch? Bunny Ranch? Ranch?
Go to the Mustang Ranch in Vegas, and there are women there that you can pay and spend time with them and actually guaranteed to get what you want. But if you're willing to spend time or to spend your hard-earned money just to have the privilege of buying somebody's dinner, listen, guy, that doesn't speak to a whole lot of self-worth in this. I mean, it would be one thing if this were 1956, but it's not. It's not 1956 anymore. It's 2014. These women make as much as you do, some of them more. If you're willing to pull out your wallet every time you go somewhere with a woman, then you're buying her, okay? And if you want, that's what you want for a relationship, fine. But I would suggest to you that if you don't want to end up feeling like a John, that you might figure out a different kind of woman to get connected to. So that's the deal. The Dutch treat or no treat.
One more red flag. We have about 20 minutes left, and I know. Well, I mean, we can keep going. Unless we're going to talk about briefly or talk about Adele Mercier. But one other thing I think it's important to note is early on in the relationship, a little test you can do is to go to her for emotional support for some issue you're having and see how she responds. Does she respond with the same consideration and tenderness and care she expects from you when she's having some type of emotional problem or issue at work or whatever is causing her distress? And if she's disinterested or sort of does an there, now back to me, this is something to pay attention to. That means if you have problems, that's too bad. They're your problems. She does not want to be bothered with them. But you can bet she will expect you to stand at attention should she even have a hangnail. That's an issue. You want somebody who is going to be as supportive and caring towards you when you need a shoulder or a helping hand as she will expect you to be.
Yes, if you tell your partner that you've just been diagnosed with terminal cancer and she wants to start talking about the 2 zits that are on her ass, let's reconsider that one too. That may not be the type.
And it doesn't even have to be something as horrible as stage 2 cancer. I mean, it could be.
I was being sarcastic.
My boss is giving me a really hard time, and I'm worried about my job. Yeah, say that. And if you see a little puff of smoke where she was once sitting, you have your answer. But but it could be, you know, it doesn't have to be something huge. Just see if she, you know, anything, just no matter how minor. Can she be supportive, or does she try to suck all the oxygen back up in the room?
I think I would like to talk about Mercier for a couple of minutes. I know you have to go soon. I just wanted to recap this with
Hmm.
one last thought. It really takes courage for men to go into relationships with the idea that they're important, that they are important in that relationship, that their needs are, that there's more to it than just whether I can score or whether I can get her to want to be with me or whether or not I can meet her standards. Those are almost instinctive things in men. I understand that. It's very hard to get out of that, and it does. It takes guts to start thinking, I'm not going into another relationship as a patsy. I'm not going into another relationship as a walking ATM. And I'm not going to go into another relationship where I don't matter and where I measure my worth as a man and as a human being by whether or not I can make her smile when she's emotionally about 4 years old.
Well,
Because that's what a lot of men do.
well, a
But
lot of
without
men.
that courage, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I think what you're talking about specifically there are a lot of men that, I mean, men that I believe what we've discussed today applies to. I mean, I think what we're talking about, I hate the label, but it's codependency, where they are seeking approval. If you go into any relationship desperate for, dependent on getting the approval of someone, you've already handicapped yourself, because that makes you vulnerable. That makes you easy to manipulate and control.
And a lot of men are very, very easy to manipulate and control with sex, with guilt, with shame, with playing men to become enablers and white knights. It's an easy thing to do. And it's the rare guy that can see all this as it's happening or before it's happening and then make different decisions, make better calls. And it does. Like I said, it takes some real guts. It does. There's no way to do this that's easy because, I mean, it's already set up sort of a stacked game. Men are the ones that really have to fear, or they have to risk rejection, because despite 50 years of feminism, we are still expected to be the ones to initiate and to take the dominant role in creating something happening between two people. So we take the risk of hearing no. We take the risk of hearing some woman say as if. That is sort of comes with the territory, and I don't know if that's going to change. But I tell you what, you can do this, and while you're going to hopefully offend the hell out of a lot of women who are used to men coming up, sitting on their haunches with their front paws out and their tongues hanging out, saying, what do I have to do for a treat? You certainly gain a lot in terms of your self-respect, and if you can do that, the woman that you will eventually end up with is already going to know what kind of guy you are from the beginning and is going to be a lot less likely to test that. Not completely. I mean, there's more that comes with relationships down the road, but for God's sake, weed out the garbage before you get involved with it, and you might have a better shot at not having to deal with that stuff more down the road. We want to talk about a really, I'm trying to look, I made up, I sort of said I was going to cuss less in this show, but there's no other word for this moment.
Before we start, if I can just, it's not a trigger warning, but for those of you who are watching this via Shrink for Men, we're going to step away from relationship issues and discuss some gender issues, feminism and men's rights. So if that's not your interest, you can press pause or click away from the page now. But
like the children, do whatever you need to do. But you also might want to hear this because it affects children. This one does in particular. Now, we have a professor, and I will curtail some of my language for this show.
Is it Queen's University in Australia, or is it in Canada?
It's in Canada, and she is effed up. Tara, you have a bit of the story there. Can you sort of explain what this person is up to?
Sure. For anyone who wants to read an article on this story, Alison Tiemann, otherwise known as Typhon Blue, wrote an article that's available on Voice for Men right now about Professor Adele Mercier, who is very much opposed to men's studies, men's issues groups forming on the Queen's University campus, who basically came out and said in a comment exchange with Allison that boys who are raped by female adults in some type of authority role, whether it's in a juvenile detention center or high school or elementary school, are not victims. Basically that they were asking for it and they enjoyed it.
This is, I believe...
And that it is not the same as a woman or a girl being raped or sexually assaulted. It's not the same thing. And that... no words.
I want to suggest... I mean, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. We'll probably bring it back up again next week in our intelligence report. And as a matter of fact, it may be a good idea to leave it at that. That if there's people out there watching this that think that underage boys being groomed and rewarded for sexual favors to adult women is not rape, one, the law says it is. It is rape. But if you don't believe that it has an impact on them, please go to avoiceformen.com and do a search for a video there called "Rape is Seriously Hysterical."
Well, you know, I do want to say this. You know, right now, rape culture is a thing that's being discussed on a lot of blogs and a lot of news publications, and this is feminists' new battle cry and the war on women. We live in a rape culture, patriarchy. This is so much projection and bullshit. I don't know anyone. I can't remember reading any publication where it's been suggested that as a society, Western civilization condones and embraces the raping and sexual assault of women. It's ridiculous. People aren't on board with that. People don't think it's okay, unless they're criminals, but you're not going to change their mind anyway because they're sociopathic criminals. It's such a load of crap. But if there is a rape culture, it's one in which young boys and men being sexually assaulted is okay. It's a point of humor. It's used as jokes. It's not taken seriously by people like this Professor Adele Mercier. We see it when teachers, elementary and high school teachers who have been diddling their students or it's just assaulting them, either get no jail time or incredibly lenient sentences when if a man had done the same thing to a female student, he would have been locked up for a long time. So, you know, I wrote an article a while back saying that there is no rape culture, but I want to amend that. I think there is. I think we have a rape culture where it's acceptable or not considered a problem when boys and men are sexually assaulted and the targets of sexual violence.
And isn't it just telling, Dr. T, that the source of the approval and the rationalization for the sexual abuse of young boys is found pretty much in equal parts from our feminist community and from our far-right, ultra-conservative community, some of those which would, just like feminists, be ready and willing to go out and prosecute the boys, would go after a 13, and they do. We have
13-year-old for child support.
Yes, we have young boys that are being forced to pay their rapist child support. Uh, anyway, we'll have more on that next week on the intelligence report. Want to thank everybody for showing up. See, we had a lot of viewers. Thank you all for showing up, for the great feedback. There were no questions for us in the first episode of this. We again will be checking the comments, and if there are questions or comments that we feel like we need to bring back and bring into this discussion, we're going to do that. Dr. T, any final thoughts before we go?
A couple, yes. One, I wanted to apologize to a woman I corresponded with this week who sent me an email. She had questions, and I had hoped to address it as today's topic, but I think we're going to try to do it next week, regarding how there are individuals in the mental health profession who counsel families and men and regarding abusive women and girls, and basically what they enable and encourage is the continued abuse of the female, whether it's adult or adolescent, of their targets, and the problems with that. So I think that's what we're going to do next week. And my apologies, I thought we might cover that today, but it looks like it's going to be next week. And also, since we were able to do a call with Colonel Kirk last week and the sound quality wasn't too bad, at some point in the future, possibly not next week, if you would like to come on the air with us, or if you don't mind, you don't want to be anonymous, we could also invite somebody, we'll be topic driven, of course, to join us here to discuss something relevant to the show.
Next week, anyway. Oh, and before too long, we will be having Tom Golden as a guest on this show, which I think will be a great addition. Tom always has some really cool stuff to say. So next week, then, we're going to be talking about what Dr. T just brought up, and hopefully a lot more about how to find good mental health assistance, which is like finding the molecule that's on the needle that's in the haystack, but thankfully there are some ways to do it. There's just more ways to do it than there is actually decent clinicians out there. Want to thank everybody again for showing up. Thank you,
Bye.
Dr. T. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.